Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, folks. We're going to give it a quick minute and let folks keep joining before we get started. My name is Nina Perez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. If folks, as you're coming in, if you could jump into the chat and say hello to each other like we normally do and say your name, your pronouns, and what state you're zooming in from, and city if you're feeling like you really want to tell us that too. And I'll get us. Hello, Olivia. Hi, Lori. Like me. So, hello, Adrian. Hi, Katie. Monica heard me. I wanted to bop here while I waited with you all. Hi, Suzanne. New Hampshire. We got New Hampshire, Colorado, Ohio, California in the house. Hello, folks. Hi, folks. So great to see you here. We're going to get started shortly. But for right now, go grab some water, tea, whatever it is you want this time of day as we jam out and we give it a minute for folks to join. Hi, Lori. Our topic today is going to be art and democracy. We're doing craftivism, talking about art and the role of art in our movement and how we can use art in our movement. And Lori, we actually, if you've heard of Hope, yeah, you're in the right place, Lori. And Hope McMath is also from Jacksonville, your presenter tonight. So beautiful, beautiful treat. Hello, Artiste. I see some artists in the chat. You're in the right place. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. And folks, just keep sharing your information in the chat as we are getting started. But hello, 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 everybody. My name is Nina Perez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I almost want to stop talking so that I can keep jamming out. That was great. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be getting started in a few minutes. And again, just grab your water, headphones, tea, and whatever feels nourishing for you for the next hour as folks keep trickling in. And again, as we're waiting here in the chat, say hello to each other and follow suit with what other folks are doing. Put your name, pronouns, and the state that you're zooming from. And just thank you so much for joining us. And we're so glad to see everyone here tonight. And it's so wonderful seeing some new faces, well, new names in the chat, rather. And tonight we're really going to have a great session. But first, some logistics. This call is webinar style due to the high volume of RSVPs. So please use that chat vigorously to connect. You know, we don't usually record these meetings, but today we are. So we hope you stay with us for the entire hour, but also that you take this video after you attend today and that you share it with other people that you think might be interested in this. We know that this time can be hard for some folks, while easy for some, hard for others, and we want to make sure that the resource shared here today gets as many people as possible. And finally, as always, join our Moms Next Door group for more person-to-person connection with amazing moms and caregivers in the community. If you want to really be able to connect with people more directly, we have different opportunities to have community. Later on, I'll be sharing about our Risers program, which is a leadership program. We also have our monthly dispatch that comes with resources, including opportunities and ideas for mutual aid to do locally in your communities or to participate in, along with different actions, readings. So make sure that you're keeping abreast of those. And then not this week, but typically after these meetings, we also have an opportunity to stay on and to further connect with each other and dig in deeper on the topic. I'm right on that, Monica, right? Not today? Get some people. It's those summer hours this summer.
Correct.
But if you have something that you hear about today and you want to engage in a deeper conversation, we will have that power hour next month. So hold on to that and we can bring it back. Now, I'm really happy to introduce Hope McMath. Hope is a cultural leader, educator, artist, curator, and activist whose knowledge and passion for the arts is matched by a strong commitment to social justice. And I just feel so honored always that I also get to live in the same community. So she is dedicated to connecting the arts to social justice, education, accessibility, and the environment, wellness and inclusion and diversity. She's the founder of Yellow House, which you already heard someone mention in the chat or saw, an organization in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect art and community to build understanding, inspire empathy, and spark civic engagement. She is also a facilitator for humanities and medicine programs, including with the Mayo Clinic. She teaches art history in public schools, curates exhibitions throughout the region, and has just joined the faculty at Randolph College in Virginia for the MFA in Arts Leadership program. She maintains an active studio practice as a printmaker, linking her own art with the issues that she is passionate about. And you'll see some of those links in the chat, and we hope you'll explore more about Yellow House and Hope's amazing work. Hope is an organizer, deeply engaged with her neighbors in mutual aid, removing symbols of oppression, and upholding free speech and addressing racial injustice. You know, folks, one of the reasons we really want to do this topic, this was a topic that you all chose. You know, you all asked us to do something on art and craftivism, and art is a cornerstone of our democracy that often goes undiscussed. And fostering empathy and sparking action is one of the things that makes art really essential in our movement. At an address to the Museum of Modern Art in 1939, President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "The conditions for democracy and for art are one and the same. What we call liberty in politics results in freedom in the arts. There can be no vitality in the works gathered in the museum unless it exists in the right to spontaneous life in a society in which the arts are nourished. If we nourish the conditions of a free life, we nourish the arts and we nourish our democracy." And that's why I'm so honored to have Hope with us today. And I will be speaking no more. I want to hear from Hope and to explore together how art and the love of doing it and supporting it is key to movements for change. Hope?
Oh gosh, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here with Moms Rising. Really grateful to be sharing even this virtual space with you all from literally all over the country and including Canada. And again, I'm thrilled to be with you. I am joining you from Jacksonville, Florida, the very far sort of northeast corner of Florida. We'll talk a little bit about the special-ish that is Florida. But I'm also coming to you from the ancestral land of the Timucua and of the Creek. And again, it's just an honor to be with all of you, especially on a topic that I certainly am very biased towards, which is the role that art plays in building a more just world. So as we go through this, I'm going to be sharing a bunch of images. So I'm a visual artist, and we will focus mostly on the visual side of the arts, not only, but that will be the focus. And so this is going to be image heavy. We're going to have a couple opportunities where I'm going to be asking you for your thoughts and input. And so a couple times during this presentation, we'll have a poll for you all to answer. If for at any reason that poll isn't working for you, you can just always use the chat. We've got folks looking at the chat so that we can pull your voice into this conversation. So I'm always a little reluctant to ever speak really to any group and claim any kind of expertise. All I'm really bringing to this table is my own lived experience, my passion for the role that art has played throughout history, and my absolute belief that it is essential in our world today. And I hope that no matter what heaviness you might be bringing into the space tonight, because there's lots of it, that this sort of immersion into creativity and art and inspiration will actually buoy you. I know you all have very full days and the world is wild. And so the arts can kind of help us navigate that. So I hope to bring that to you this evening. So we're going to look a little bit at some past examples of how art has been used to feed movements and create change. But I promise you, we are going to also spend some time talking about how the arts are being used literally right now all around us. And I know for a fact that the real wisdom tonight is in this virtual room. You all are bringing lots of experience with you. And so there will be an opportunity at the end for you to share some of what you see happening in your community, because this is a chance for us to actually build a bigger resource list for all of us to tap into, right? And let me say, we are also going to be talking about each of you as creative beings, because we are that. So we're going to start at the individual level. And with this, we are going to have our first poll that's going to pop up. And our good friend Monica, who's helping us out, is going to do this. So you have a poll here. And you can see what it is asking for those of you who can see it. Many people do not identify as artists necessarily, but I would love for you to select below any one of these art forms that you feel that you are. Are you a writer? Are you a dancer? Are you a musician? Are you a visual artist? Are you an actor? Right? So go in there and sort of hit one of those one of those answers and let us know what you identify with, right? And even though on here, I think you're only choosing one, I want you all to be thinking about how many of these do you consider yourself, right? How many of you are writers? How many of you are dancers? How many of you are musicians? How many of you are visual artists or actors? I see somebody in the chat saying, I'm a maker. Oh, good. It let you choose more than one. So choose whichever ones sort of identify with you. Oh, somebody crochets, right? So yeah, you're making objects, right? Objects that are visual, but go beyond that. Terrific. So we have a lot of artists in the room, right? Of all kinds, it looks like. We have a lot of dancers, a lot of artists. We have musicians. We have people who are learning how to play music. I see somebody in the chat talking about learning piano for the first time, people who are stage managers. Somebody says, can I count gardening as art? Oh, heck yeah. You'll see me talk about gardening as we go through this talk as well. It too is very much an art form, right? So the point of this poll, right? So we've sort of polled everybody in the room. We've got a little of this and a little of that. Most of us identify with one or two art forms more than others. I would argue that we all should actually answer yes to all of these. We are all writers. We are all dancers. We are all musicians or use our own voice as our instrument. We are all visual artists in various forms, be that painter, sculptor, crochet artist, gardener, needlepoint artist. And we are all actors, sometimes on a daily basis, right? Or we, in some form or fashion, are involved in presentation and performance. So I would argue we are all of that. Because the question I asked you was not, do you make money doing these things? I did not ask you whether the world at large thinks you're good at it or not. I did not ask you whether you were trained in it, right? I was just asking, are you these things? There's something that has happened to us in the modern and contemporary era in which we've separated ourselves from this innate need we have to be creative in all its forms, right? I am not a good singer by really any standard, but when my favorite song comes on, I can promise you I'm singing it, right? When my favorite music comes on, I move my body, right? No, I'm not an actor that most people are going to put up on the stage, but on any given day, I find myself embodying other people's stories, having to perform in some form or fashion, right? So we all are all of this, right? So we are good with this poll, because if we were all to do it again, we'd be checking every single one of those, right? So when we're talking about art and democracy and art and movements, this for me is critical. If we don't agree on that baseline that we all actually have a need to create on a regular basis, that society actually uses the arts and collective art making as a way to express our full humanity, then we're really not building a good story here, right? We're not building it on a strong foundation. So I appreciate all of you doing that particular poll. I'm going to start by sharing some images now to put some of that in context, right? And I hope that you will see yourselves in these. So let me, oh, here's the results of the poll. So 41% identified as writers, at least this is in this poll. 12% as dancers, 15% as musicians, 66% as visual artists. That's amazing. And 15% as actors. That percentage might be a little different if we pulled all the stuff in the chat in there. But again, if we were to do this again, it would be 100 and 100 and 100 and 100 and 100, right? So thank you very much. So I'm going to start by sharing a quote by Martin Luther King that you see here on your screen. And it's a powerful one, right? Because I think it speaks to art and how it lands in times of crisis, which a lot of us could argue that is a time similar to what we are in right now, right? So as my sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways in which I could respond to my situation, either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course. Right? So even Dr. King, who certainly sang and performed in lots of ways, probably would not have identified himself traditionally as an artist, but he understood the transformational power of creativity, right? And that it actually plays a critical role in us navigating sometimes the deepest crises that we might be experiencing. So I'm going to share some visual works with you as I go through this. And I'm starting with this one because my gut told me, and I think it was right based on that poll, that we had a lot of people who created things in this group, even if we didn't consider ourselves the kinds of artists that might have a painting in a frame on the wall in a museum. So I'm starting with what I consider one of the most powerful works of art and democracy created, especially in this country. And this is the AIDS Memorial Quilt. I know many of you know about this quilt. This was a collective, large-scale public art project that was created as a memorial to people who had died of AIDS. This is a project that is still ongoing. This is a project that was spread widely during the 1980s. Here you see it in its fullest expression, which was on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. I don't mind telling you, I also wanted to just look at this image myself tonight, because when I think about the mall right now in Washington, D.C., there's all kind of stuff going on the mall, right? And this is how I like to think about a public space like that. So the memorial quilt was created by asking family members and friends of people who had died of AIDS to create a single quilt square that then got sent into the AIDS Memorial Project, where volunteers then stitched all of these together. And there are literally thousands and thousands of pieces to this quilt. Why is this a democratic work of art? Well, it's sort of obvious in that it's very public. It's one that lots of people can take in at once, right? But it is also a powerful work of activism because it involved the hands of tens of thousands of people, right? This isn't art being made just by a single artist in a studio. This is art being made by community, for community, with the purpose of lifting up an issue and trying to motivate people into action. Yes, this is a memorial, but it was also a way to raise and elevate the issue of the AIDS crisis, the lack of access to healthcare, the need to fight stigma, And it ended up doing all of those things. And again, this still exists and pops up in cities all over the country on a regular basis, especially in the month of December. And so when we're thinking about art, I want you to think about what we can each do with a piece of fabric and a needle, right? I'm not necessarily talking about art that is a commodity, art that is only made by the privileged or only collected by the privileged, right? So why does this work, right? When we think about the AIDS Memorial Quilt, why does this work? Well, it works because there are some things that are just innate in the arts, which makes it a powerful tool for movement building. Art sparks imagination, right? Art can give us a way to imagine a different world than the one that we're currently living in. It can provide a space for risk taking and failure, right? I especially think of this when I think of our young people. I know we have tons of moms in here. In fact, maybe all of you are moms. I'm going to confess to you, I am not a mom in the traditional sense, but I do mother. And so I spend a lot of time with young people, and I think about the role that art making plays in getting us used to being messy, not just messy in the physical sense, but messy in the idea that we try things and they don't turn out, right? We adapt, we do them a little differently. We unravel things and start again. We cover over a painting that we hate, but we don't give it up, right? And so it's that kind of risk taking that I think the arts provide for us. The arts also give us a means to express when words are not enough, right? Some of us, words come easy. Others, that's not the case. And things like visual art can give a different kind of expression to make ideas and questions and concerns and identities tangible, right? Visual art can also give us symbols to contemplate, symbols that can provide motivation. This particular sculpture, which sits outside of the United Nations building in New York City, is a powerful example of an artist specifically addressing gun violence and a desire for a regulation of these sort of powerful machines that take lives from us, right? We can read pages about this. We can also look at a sculpture like this and kind of feel it, right? We almost have a visceral experience. Art also gives us a way to channel anger and to channel pain. This is a slide of images of an arts and medicine program specifically targeted to veterans. Veterans experiencing not only physical wounds from war and service, but also emotional and mental wounds. It's a mask making project in which veterans have an opportunity to try to put what they're feeling into these masks. And of course, masks themselves are powerful. They give us a chance to say something and still protect ourselves, right? It allows us to make visible things that are sometimes hidden. And so we can't forget that when we talk about art and justice and art and democracy, that the healing power of art actually really matters. But art also reminds us of beauty. Art also helps us experience a sense of awe and wonder. Art is also about joy and playfulness. And the thing I love about art is it's something you can do. It's so accessible. You can do it almost anywhere with anything, right? This is actually an image of a child at my organization, which we'll talk a minute about in a few moments at Yellow House. And this little boy stated that he wanted to color, right? So I pull out the big bin of crayons and I set him up on the floor and give him a bunch of big pieces of paper. He decided that those crayons were not for coloring on that particular day, but he spent about 35 minutes unloading all the crayons, reloading the crayons, dumping the crayons, putting the crayons back in, right? Like he completely reframed the idea of what that particular art tool was supposed to be used for. And it was super fun and super joyful. And lots of people ended up joining in with him, right? So this idea of accessing creativity is something that really is available to all of us. Art also allows us to be seen, right? All the arts, but here I'm talking about visual art, provides a level of representation of the diverse world that we live in. This is important for all of us to see and witness, but it's especially important for people who often do not see their stories out in the public sphere. They do not see their experience being expressed in a way that holds dignity and respect. And then art allows each of us to be seen, right? Like we can see, we can see ourselves. We can also see one another. And in that seeing one another, we gather together, right? We can collectively come together to make art and to make message. This is from a workshop we did recently at Yellow House, where a group of people working on affordable housing in our city wanted a way to get a little bit out of their heads and more into their hearts and their bellies. And they wanted a way to be able to connect with one another. So we did collective art making where everybody left with posters. And this was the message they decided was needed for the night. Rent is too damn high, right? And so there's the power in the making of the art. There's the importance of doing it in community with other people. And then everybody went home with a poster to be able to tack up wherever they felt that this message was needed. And art helps us grieve. And I don't know about you, but I feel like probably one of the things we are worst at, especially in Western society, especially in this country, is collective grieving. We struggle with giving the time and space to mourn when we are sad, to recognize our losses, to reflect on how those losses will impact us long term. And in an image like this one, these images are all from Orlando, right down the road from where I am. And of course, many of us, if not all of us, remember the horrific shootings at the Pulse nightclub. The mourning that needed to happen and the grieving after the shootings at Pulse were absolutely first and foremost for the lives that were lost. But if you remember back to that moment, there also was an aftermath that was quite awful, in which the LGBTQ community, the Latin community were also being attacked. And so art not only served as a way to mourn and grieve, but also as a way to pull people together, to provide some safety and provide some healing. This is another example. This is not visual art, though it becomes visual art, right? So this is after a mass shooting in France, right? And people were in utter shock, devastation for what had happened. And somebody in a nearby business literally rolled a piano out into the middle of the street and began to play music. And you can see what happened. People started to gather around. People started to grieve, to cry, to sing. And so it becomes itself something visual, right? We begin to see a community come together. Not that they are coming together to bring back the lives lost, but to at least to begin to deal with that loss. Art is therapy. And for all of us on this call who are moms and who mother, we cannot forget that art plays that role for sometimes the very youngest of children. Again, sometimes we can't put words to the issue, but often children will draw the things that are bothering them, right? So this was drawn by a child named Tyler Dorsey, age 7, in the immediate aftermath after September 11th in New York City, right? There are really important things that happen for us as community, as activists, as healers, as teachers, when we simply provide materials, invitation, and permission for people to sit and pause and reflect. We learn a lot from one another when we do exactly that. And then art literally heals, right? Doctors, nurses, patients, art at the bedside, art as a tool for building empathy. It plays a role in our hospitals too. And art allows us to reckon with some of the things we just don't want to deal with, right? So these images are from the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, from the Peace and Justice Memorial, which recognizes the history of lynching in this country. It is nothing but a work of art. And it is a place in which people can reckon with a very difficult past, one that for too long has been covered up and erased. And again, it allows us to do it together in public, right? And when we do this stuff together in public, justice itself becomes more possible. And art can motivate us, right? So these are just a bunch of posters about voting. Art is a motivator, right? We can tell people to vote, but we can also line our streets with images that encourage people to vote, right? We can use beauty, we can use humor, we can use sarcasm, we can tap into sort of all of our emotions in a way that can get people's butt in motion around all kinds of issues, not just around voting. So art is power, protest, beauty, inspiration, activism, resistance. It's messy. It gives us a place to escape and to rest. It is community. It is our humanity. It is change. And yes, art is highly political. And anybody who tells you it isn't, they're wrong, because it is. The act of making art itself is a political act, right? To create something in a world that sometimes feels like all it wants to do is destroy, means just being in relationship with art is powerful, right? And it always has been, right? From the beginning of time, right? Tens of thousands of years ago, people were making their mark, and they were making their mark while in community in a way that was very public, often spiritual, and always important. Art has allowed activists to push back against imperialism, against war in all of its forms. And some of our greatest works of art have come to us from people who are looking at the world around them and saying, not on my watch. I may not be able to literally stop the bullets. I may not be able to stand in front of the tanks, but I can make works of art that cause people to question, document what is happening, right? And make people feel something that they may not otherwise feel. Art played a huge role in the civil rights movement in this country, right? With Black artists, white artists, and artists across the spectrum of race and gender and geography. It served as a tool for documentation. Martin Luther King even understood this. He embedded photographers in the movement because he knew that people would need to see visual images to better understand what was actually happening around them. The other thing about art is that it is a place for diversity. In a moment in which talking about diversity and inclusion and representation and equity is being weaponized, it's being criminalized. Again, y'all, I'm in the state of Florida. So this is real for us down here, as I know it is for all of us. But all I have to do is even look at these 6 images of 6 visual artists who were all involved in arts and activism. And I can see that the people who have always been involved in art making represent the fullness of our world and the beauty of our community. And yes, there are individual artists. This is one of my favorite, Kathy Kollwitz. She was a German artist, woman who made art against war, against poverty, and for liberation. And these images still resonate with us today. artists like Ai Weiwei, whose work you see here. Those columns are covered uh, in vests that are worn by people who are traversing water. Specifically, these all come from people who were fleeing Syria. And a lot of people were shocked to see an installation of uh, these life vests on, you know, this very famous cultural space, right? But it's in your face, and it's asking people to not just cross those thresholds to engage in culture, but to recognize that there are things happening right now that also desperately need our attention. The Black Panther Party, they are an example of a collective of artists, not single artists, but a collective of artists that used art to put out newspapers, pamphlets, posters to speak to the issues of the Black Panther Party, from feeding young children to Black liberation and everything in between. Collective art was also made by, and still being made by, the Guerrilla Girls, who take on issues of women's representation, not just in the arts, but in society as a whole. And these are incredibly powerful works of art. And the women behind the mask are powerful too. They do this anonymously because they understand that by doing it anonymously, it does a couple things. They are more protected, which allows them to keep doing the work, something to remember in our movements. It also allows all of us to see ourselves in the creation of their works of art. And then, of course, we already talked about the AIDS Memorial, but the collective called ACT UP was huge in changing this country's attitudes towards people with AIDS. And more recently, the movement to take down Confederate monuments throughout our country, the Black Lives Matter movement, the summer of 2020, and our racial reckoning have also played out in visual ways right in our streets with everyday people making stuff, whether it's making a memorial wreath, projecting Breonna Taylor's image up on this plinth, right? Singing music, reading poetry, like all of these things we know have played a huge role. So I am an artist, an activist, an educator, and a curator. And for me, the edges between those things are pretty much non-existent. And so I think for all of us who are in this life, this world, we often find ourselves having to compartmentalize our role as parents, our roles in the workplace, our roles in community, and our roles in change action. But I think there are ways that we can blur them, right? For me, as an artist, I have turned my art into activism, and I focus my creative work on lifting up messages that I think matter, right? And I build on this idea that Toni Morrison put together so beautifully in this quote. This is precisely the time, and when I say this, I mean right now. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, for self-pity, no need for silence, and no room for fear. Because it is in our hardest times that we need people creating, right? So for me, I created a place called Yellow House about 9 years ago. This was in the aftermath of Trump's first election. And it's a place of art and social justice, of community building. We curate exhibitions, we bring people together, we convene, we plan, we act. We also use the space to heal. This was during COVID when we couldn't be open. We created a healing tree out on our front lawn where people could come and share the shadow and shine of the moments that they were living through. We use art as mutual aid, where we use artistic spaces to give people the food and things that they need and allow people to leave the things that they have that they can give. So this is a space of reciprocity. And I would argue art and artists give us a lot of opportunity to do this. And when we are talking about art, I never leave out books in any conversation. And I bet there's a bunch of book lovers in this particular virtual room And I think when we're talking about art and activism and art and democracy, books play a huge role in that, right? And for children, it is their access point, their earliest access point to experiencing visual works of art are in their picture books. So let's pick those books well and make sure that not only the messages, but the art that our children are seeing are ones that will uplift, will empower, will express stories that too often are not being told, right? I'm going to land here for a second. So this is artwork that I've created in the past, and I'm showing it here. So I'm a printmaker, so I do printmaking and letterpress. These are both projects that I did to heal myself and for my own therapy during the summer of 2020. But I also did them to raise money, right, to support various causes. The poster on the right, the Martin Luther King quote, I did after some of our activists in Jacksonville were arrested during one of our protests. I had no money to be able to help with a bail fund. So I made art to then make money to then donate to a bail fund, right? And any one of us can do that, whether we crochet, bake, garden, right? We have the ability, if we need to turn those things into the kind of support that might be needed at any given moment, right? So today, artists are doing all kinds of things, right? Individual artists are putting out amazing work that is big, in the streets, in your face, unprecious. We also have artists who don't call themselves artists necessarily coming together to provide spaces of healing and mourning. We are dealing with issues like the climate crisis using art, and a lot of the art I'm showing y'all here, like these are not even artists who identify, right? Like these are works that are done in and with community. Art is motivating people to go to the polls. Art was hugely important at Alligator Alcatraz, right? Both messages, but also visual messages in actually getting that terrible place closed down. It was a way to motivate people. It was a way to amplify the issues. It was a way to be seen, because that camp was put in a place that they were pretty sure nobody would go to, right? That everybody would just turn a blind eye to that. And that is not what happened. And art and artists played a big role in that. Art has actually played a big role in actually closing other spaces. This is an activist who is very involved in the Berks Immigration Detention Center. And this is an image of an exhibition that just happened showing the amount of art that they made over the 8 years, y'all, it took to finally close that place down. Art was on banners, art was on shirts, art was on people's bodies, photography was being used, signs were being used, postcards were being sent to elected officials. And so when we're talking about art and activism, it shows up in all those ways. Art has also played a role to lift up the conversation about the genocide in Gaza. This is a large community-based quilt that was being taken up the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, right? And so art is showing up in all kinds of spaces that it typically has not. It is showing up in the space of reproductive rights, right? Where artists are making sure that we normalize the conversation around abortion access. Visual art has a power to normalize something that a lot of people often don't want to talk about. It is showing up in the streets in our No Kings protests all over the country. These are some of my favorite of this group that uses sort of indigenous practices, right? And sort of casts it in a contemporary lens. So it's a way to not only speak to culture, but to also speak to the absolute necessity for change. And there's some shaming going on here, right? And visual art can do that too. It plays a pretty good role in shaming people who are just bad actors. Art can also be humorous, right? So these are activists outside the Met Gala this year. So many of you know about the Met Gala. It's this big giant event, and I love museums, but this particular event was being chaired by Jeff Bezos and a lot of members of the billionaire Epstein class. And activists decided to have an alternative fashion show out front. And they basically took over the streets with this fashion show of recycled objects and messages and activists. And it was incredibly beautiful and powerful, and gave a way to shame the people inside and engage the people who are outside. And of course, sometimes it's as simple as this, right? These images have become iconic, of the rent hand over the mouth to represent the missing and murdered Indigenous women from coast to coast in this country. So sometimes the simpler symbol and image can be as powerful, if not more powerful. It's also taking on issues to support the LGBTQ community, right? These are both images. One, a community quilt, which I love because I feel like it's in the legacy of the AIDS memorial quilt, but also drag story time, y'all. When we talk about arts and activism, we cannot forget our libraries as one of the freest places we can create together. And our libraries know that. Many of our libraries have started to do arts programming in addition to their literacy programming, and drag story time is one of the best. So with our last couple minutes, there are lots of art forms that people use, some of them more traditional than others. I'm just sharing all of this to motivate and inspire, right? Posters are the most obvious. Many of us make posters. Sometimes it's just markers on cheap poster board. Other times it's brilliant artists making amazing images. This is important because poster making not only provides messages in the streets, but it also can give us a collective space to create together where everybody feels like they can do it. There's also zine making, right? This ability to put together small books that are made on copy machines and put together and distributed by community for community. Zines have played a huge role in providing education on all kinds of issues, from abortion access to pushing back against ICE, to mutual aid, to history lessons. There's a long tradition of zines, and it's one we should continue. People use their cameras. Some of you may remember the social media campaign called Humans of New York, right? It's now been around for like a decade or so. This matters because this was a photographer using his camera to tell stories of everyday people. This is how we push back against forces that think we should not be and not celebrate and not care about the diverse world that we live in, right? That people's stories really do matter. And then one of my favorite projects out there on social media is the Tiny Pricks Project. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but it's people embroidering on found fabrics, often fabrics that have personal meaning, with messages. They get photographed and then they get uploaded onto social media. They also get sold to raise money for causes that need money, which is pretty much every cause out there, right? This is one of my favorite Tiny Pricks piece. I adore this work because I feel like it says something in such a simple way that we can tend to complicate, right? So if we want an image that represents the need to move away from coal, and people always want to talk about the existence of clean coal, which doesn't really exist, this image is worth 1,000 words, right? A lot of you crochet and knit. I could show you 1,000 examples of how people use knitting and crocheting in activism, right? They make art, they make hats, they put them on trees. Yarn bombers are all over the country. I'm showing this particular image because it takes the knitting and crocheting involved in activism away from something that's just performative and into the space in which we are actually changing the world, right? Where we are actually providing people who are cold a way to be warm. So when we're talking about activism, yes, there is that loud stuff we do. There's also the quiet things we can do behind the scenes, like make things to make money to support causes. But we also can literally put it into action to heal our communities, to make one person's life better for one day is worth the effort. And let's not forget about our kiddos. They are not left out of any of this. There is no better way to involve children in the work of change than the arts, right? It's a way for them to express their own voices. They can learn from the arts. They can connect to other people. We learn from them. They learn from us. The world gets to hear them more loudly. So let's not forget that this is critically important for our young folks. And yes, it can change policy. I don't have time to spend a bunch of time talking about policy, but in my own city, we have done art projects, art exhibitions, and art actions that have led to changes in housing. It has led to the removal of Confederate monuments. It has led to education reform, right? Like it goes on and on, right? We are seeing the arts being used right now to elevate the very dangerous circumstances that ICE has put our people in. That is going to lead to policy change, I can promise you. And that will not have happened without visual culture putting a language around how communities feel about ICE in their communities. So there's lots of resources. You're going to get some put in the chat that are just some links that I tend to use. These are organizations that I go to for inspiration, for ideas to use with kids, for ways to get active as artists. And I mean every kind of artist. And I'm going to leave you with this quote by a great ceramics artist and activist, and I love it. Being an artist is not just about what happens when you are in the studio. The way you live, the people you, oops, did I just mess that up? I did, didn't I? The people you choose to love, the way you love them, the way you vote, the words that come out of your mouth, the size of the world you make for yourselves, your ability to influence the things you believe in, your obsessions and your failures. All of these will also become the raw material for the art that you make. So when we're talking about art activism here, we're talking about you. We're talking about each one of us, right? And our fullness of who we are. And all art does, it gives us a way to push it out. It gives us a mirror to look in. It gives us a way to understand other people, to build our empathy, and a way to build community, to raise up the values that are important to us, and to motivate ourselves to take action for change. So with that, I'm going to be quiet because we have exactly like 5 minutes left. So
Actually,
I
Hope,
hope you found.
I'm gonna have you answer one question that came through. Though I feel like you've answered it, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to expand on it a bit. Someone asked, as we approach the midterm election, how can our harp help? How can our art harp is an art? How can art help us unite our campaigns for change?
Powerful. So I think art it can be that sort of unifying tool, right? I think art can be a way in which we're pulling people together that may even be working on different causes and different needs, right? The sharing of art, whether it's collective singing groups, whether it's art making, it can actually, I've found it can pull together activist groups that can sometimes feel really disparate, right? Art in the public sphere can also help to elevate the issues that are most important in your community. Art can also motivate people to the polls, right? In a big way, right? Like visual reminders on the streets that are captivating, that are motivating, that use humor, right? I've done a thing through Yellow House where I sort of incentivize the giving of art with people showing up with their little I vote stickers, right? So like you go vote, you show up at Yellow House, you've got a free print to be able to take home to celebrate your day, right? So there's lots of ways that I think we can use art leading up to the midterm elections. And this may or may not be a popular opinion, but I also think visual art as a way to shame. I didn't show y'all a lot of examples of those today. But there's artists doing projection work and doing posters and all kinds of things that are actually working to hold people accountable who should not probably be in office anymore. But let's never forget this: art is not just about saying what we don't want to be. Art can also project and show what it is we do want to be. And I think that's where it can also motivate people to the polls.
I love that, Hope. I love that so much. I want to just tell everybody, oh, go ahead, Hope. You have a
Well,
closing
we
comment?
had one more poll that I want to be able
Let's
to
do it.
put up maybe as we're ending. I want you to maybe say what you need to say. And the poll will basically ask you to share an example of something you have seen in your community using the arts that has worked, or an organization that you have been a part of, or a resource that you have tapped into. So we'll finish sort of talking, but maybe put that poll, or you can add it into the chat, because we'd love to sort of build this like coast to coast, kind of in real time list of examples that are already happening.
Love that. Yes, I'm gonna have Monica do that while I am doing the final announcements. And Hope, actually, there was someone in the chat as well. If you have examples that you can share of what you all have done on housing that's are shareable, there was someone in the chat asking if they could see more examples on that. So thank you
Yeah,
so much.
there's been a lot done. There's been a lot done in housing. Some of it being done, obviously, most of it being done with people who are most directly impacted by housing. I've seen powerful art installations being done in neighborhoods themselves, in homes that have been harmed by climate issues and not taken care of, right, have turned into almost like visual art spaces to express the frustrations of a community, the history of a community. We've seen artists using poster making and postcard making to motivate, obviously, people to show up, to speak up in governing spaces, right? City hall, state government, to be able to speak up around issues of housing. And art always has that ability, right? To like help people know where to show up, when to show up, how to show up. And so there's some very powerful examples in housing in Portland. There's some really great ones in Houston, including Project Row Houses. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have them right at hand to be able to sort of stick in the chat for you, but there's a lot. There's a lot. You'll find some good examples even just out on social media or on the web.
And what we'll try to do is these same links that we shared in the chat, folks, we'll share in our follow-up email. And so please keep sharing your examples as well so we can, and we'll try to find some of these examples that Hope has said. Well, I want everybody to say a big, big thank you in the chat to Hope, and just love and hearts and applause before you do this last poll. And as you're doing this awesome poll, I'm going to give some housekeeping closing pieces. As many of you know, this is a monthly call, and in these calls, we are always going to bring you topics that you've asked for, like this one on craftivism, and the next one is about storytelling, another art form that is a daily part of building the change that we want to see. So make sure to RSVP. You can find the link in the chat for the next Moms Next Door. And if you have a friend that you think is going to enjoy these topics, this is not just for the folks who are getting the monthly dispatch. Anyone can join these calls. We encourage you to share it. The more of us who get this information and these tools, the more of us who are going to be building awesome art in our communities, building community spaces, doing mutual aid for those who were here with Akiko when we did the mutual aid presentation. The more of us having these conversations, the better. We can't do this by ourselves, and we can't do this without community. So the more of us who are having these conversations, the better. We also encourage you to join the Moms Next Door group. We do have a base camp, not base camp. Someone's laughing at me on my team for using that terminology, but we have essentially a community space that's online where you can have conversations with each other and share resources. That link will be put in the chat. We encourage you to join that. Join that. We also have our monthly dispatch. If you want just regular recommendations on books and activities and projects and mutual aid ideas, we've had several people reach out to us saying like, oh, I hadn't really thought about doing this for mutual aid and no one's doing it in my community. I'm going to test this out. This is how, it's a learning space. It's a resource for you all that is curated every month based on the topic that we're doing, and sometimes just what's in the news. And so make sure you get that in your inbox every month, and it also gets posted to our blog. And then last but not least, as folks are completing the poll, just want to encourage people to complete the poll. The poll's in front of you. Complete it so we can populate those awesome examples locally. I know lots of folks put them in the chat too, but don't forget to answer the poll. And then in terms of our last announcement, we also have a way for you to engage directly with Moms Rising staff. We have the Risers program for moms in our community and folks who are doing deep mothering. It is a leadership program where you can learn more about civic engagement, how is it that government works, what are action opportunities, how to organize a campaign, how to organize events, everything that we do as part of the Moms Rising community. Oh, yay, Adrian, I'm so glad you applied. Sorry, I just saw that in chat. So if you haven't applied, and we won't be able to say yes to everybody, but this is an application that we do every year. This is one of the beautiful programs, a way of us pouring more into you and also learning from you. So make sure that if you're interested and you think you want to go in a little deeper with us, don't hesitate to apply for the Risers program. And I want to go ahead and we'll show what we have on the poll so far. And I want to name that we were getting lots of beautiful examples in the chat, including some wonderful statues that have become really famous in DC, that are often posted at Union Station.
They're
Adrian,
so good. They're so good. I'm so glad somebody brought those to the surface. Yeah, they're great.
they're so good. Art is one of the most beautiful things that we could probably be doing right now. And I hope everybody felt as inspired by hope as I did. And Monica, you want to show the results to that poll, or can I see it? I don't think I can see it. Well, we will populate some of these examples that you all have shared, and what we'll do is we will share them. Oh, go ahead, Monica.
Sorry, I was gonna say I don't think we can share long response with folks. I'm so
Okay.
sad about it. But we do have the organizing platform with the group that it's kind of a group chat, y'all. So I'll also share it there. If you did not get to respond, like if you haven't been seeing them, it's okay. I'll also share it in the group and you can share some lengthy responses there. It's a great way to connect. But I'll pass back to you, Nina, my bad.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And what we can also do is we'll populate in those examples, and in the follow-up email, we'll share some of the examples that were
Cool.
already shared in the chat as well. That way, folks looking for a little inspiration. Sometimes it's just the idea of a thought, right? Like something maybe you haven't
Right.
thought of before, and this helps seed that idea for you. And we'll try to put as many of those in that follow-up email as possible. So I just want to say one more big, big thank you to Hope. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight and for sharing. This was so positive. There were so many people in the chat saying how positive and inspiring this was, and I just want to echo that. We need a lot more of that right now. And yay, yes, hope. You gave us hope. And so thank you for that. And big thank you to everybody for joining tonight and for sticking through with us. And make sure that you share the recording when it gets to you with other friends and family. And have a beautiful night. And thank you for everything you do. Take care.